He walked into the room and she forgot her lines. Ingrid Bergman, the woman who had stood beside Humphrey Bogart, been crowned by the Academy and stared down global scandal, was suddenly breathless. Not from fear, not from awe, but because Gregory Peck wasn't just a co-star. He was massive. That's the word she used in her memoir. Not handsome, not charming, massive. But what did she mean? This is the story of a woman who conquered Hollywood, defied expectations, broke every rule she was supposed to follow, and in her most honest, unguarded moments, revealed what really mattered to her. From her tragic childhood in Sweden to her immortal scenes on screen, her exile, her return, and her final, haunting reflections, this is Ingrid Bergman, unfiltered. She was born not into glamour or fame, but into fragility. Ingrid Bergman entered the world on August 29, 1915, in Stockholm, Sweden, an only child in what seemed at first like an ordinary family. Her father, Justus Bergman, was a Swedish artist and professional photographer with a quiet warmth and creative soul. Her mother, Friedel Adler Bergman, was German, soft-spoken, and nurturing, but the fairy tale unraveled before it could begin. When Ingrid was just 3 years old, her mother died suddenly, leaving a void that would echo through her entire life. She was too young to understand what had happened, but the loss was immediate and permanent. Her father, heartbroken but devoted, raised Ingrid on his own, and he brought her into his creative world. He photographed her constantly. She became both subject and observer, learning, without realizing it, how light and shadow told stories. But fate wasn't done testing her. At age 12, Justus Bergman also passed away. Cancer claimed him. Ingrid, now twice orphaned before her teenage years, was sent to live with a series of relatives. She moved from home to home, never quite settling. The world had taken away the two people she loved most, and she became quiet, introspective, a dreamer with a deep sadness behind her eyes. It was on stage that she found relief. In her late teens, she auditioned for the Royal Dramatic Theatre School in Stockholm, the same elite academy that had trained Greta Garbo. Her talent was undeniable. Teachers saw in her something rare, a kind of intuitive emotional intelligence that couldn't be taught. She wasn't just acting. She was reliving something, channeling the loss and longing that had defined her childhood. The Swedish film industry in the 1930s was blossoming, and Ingrid was soon recruited to appear in local films. She made her screen debut in The Count of the Old Town in 1935, and quickly followed with more substantial roles. But it was her performance in the 1936 romantic drama Intermezzo that changed everything. In this quiet, emotionally charged film, Ingrid played a young pianist who falls in love with a married violinist. Her portrayal was stunning, measured, authentic, radiant. She didn't cry on cue, she felt the heartbreak, and so did the audience. Her performance caught the attention of David O. Selznick, the powerhouse producer behind Gone with the Wind. He saw in her something Hollywood hadn't yet mastered: naturalism. In a world of stylized stars and polished personas, Ingrid felt like a real woman, with all the complexity that entailed. In 1939, she traveled to America to star in the Hollywood remake of Intermezzo opposite Leslie Howard. She spoke English with a Swedish accent. She refused to pluck her eyebrows. She didn't even want heavy makeup. And yet, audiences were mesmerized. She wasn't a fabricated goddess. She was a revelation. Hollywood didn't just embrace her, it needed her. In an era of glamour and glitter, Ingrid Bergman brought truth to the screen. Within 3 years, she was one of the most in-demand actresses in America. She starred in a series of films that showcased her incredible range. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1941, For Whom the Bell Tolls, 1943, and The Bells of St. Mary's, 1945. But it was one film in 1942 that sealed her legacy forever. Casablanca. She played Ilse Lund, opposite Humphrey Bogart, in a story about love, sacrifice, and war. The chemistry was electric, but what truly elevated the film was Ingrid's haunting restraint. She didn't overplay her emotions. She wore them, on her face, in her silences, in her longing glances. And that's why the final scene at the foggy airport broke hearts around the world. Her tears weren't performative. They were real. Ingrid didn't just appear in Casablanca, she became part of film history. In 1944, she took on her most challenging role yet, Gaslight, where she played a woman being psychologically manipulated to question her own sanity. The emotional toll of the role was immense. but it earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress. And it introduced the term gaslighting into everyday language. She followed this with Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound and Notorious, where she starred opposite Cary Grant. Her characters were always caught between passion and principle, desire and duty. And in every film, she made us believe that the stakes were real. In 1937, before her Hollywood fame took off, Ingrid married Peter Lindström, a Swedish neurosurgeon. They had a daughter, Pia, and seemed the image of an ideal Scandinavian-American couple. But Ingrid's career and her heart pulled her in other directions. By the late 1940s, she was restless, not personally unhappy, but unfulfilled. She was looking for something more than the scripts she was offered, more than the life she was told to lead. That's when she discovered the films of Roberto Rossellini, the Italian filmmaker known for his gritty, poetic, and humanistic portrayals of post-war life. She wrote him a letter. A simple sentence: "If you need a Swedish actress who speaks English very well, who has not forgotten her German, who is not very understandable in French, and who in Italian knows only ti amo, I am ready to come and make a film with you." The letter changed her destiny. They began a collaboration, and then a love affair. It was passionate, intense, and completely scandalous. At the time, Ingrid was still married. When she became pregnant with Rossellini's child, Isabella Rossellini, the public turned on her. She was condemned by the media. One U.S. senator even called her a powerful influence for evil. But Ingrid never apologized. She married Rossellini. They had 2 more children, Roberto Ingmar Rossellini and Asada Ingrid Rossellini. She acted in his films. She lived in Italy. She sacrificed her American career for her personal and artistic convictions. And slowly, history vindicated her. In 1956, she made a triumphant return to American film with Anastasia, a story about identity, exile, and rebirth. It was personal, symbolic, and once again she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Hollywood had turned its back on her, but now it was welcoming her home. In 1958, she married Lars Schmidt, a Swedish theatrical entrepreneur who supported her love of stage work. Their marriage lasted until 1975, and during that time, Ingrid proved she could do it all: film, television, and theater across continents. She was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, winning 3. She spoke 5 languages fluently, and she worked with everyone from Hitchcock to Ingmar Bergman, no relation, to Sidney Lumet. But for all the roles, one man stood out. One name appeared in her memoir in a way that stunned readers. She described him simply: he was massive. But she wasn't talking about his height, or at least, not just his height. Gregory Peck was a commanding presence, tall, broad-shouldered, with the noble features of a Roman general. But it was something deeper that captivated Ingrid. She wrote that when Peck entered a room, he didn't enter, he filled it. She spoke of his eyes, the way they saw straight through people, but not to judge, to understand. Ingrid admitted that during filming with Peck, she sometimes forgot her lines. Not out of nerves, but because she was transported, so intensely moved by the quiet strength he exuded. She wasn't describing lust or infatuation, it was admiration, awe, a kind of emotional gravity she rarely encountered. He reminded me, she wrote, that greatness isn't about perfection, it's about presence. Peck, she said, was massive in soul, a man who carried his fame with humility and used his art not for vanity, but for truth. In 1974, Ingrid noticed a lump under her breast during a stage run in London. It was breast cancer. She underwent surgery and resumed acting almost immediately. But the illness returned years later, while she was filming Autumn Sonata, a devastating story about mothers and daughters, guilt, and aging. She was dying. But her performance was astonishing, one of the finest of her career. She followed it with one last role, portraying Golda Meir in A Woman Called Golda. Her body was frail, her voice weak, but her conviction unshakable. She won an Emmy and Golden Globe posthumously. She spent her final months in a quiet London apartment in Cheyne Walk near the Thames. Her body failed her, her lungs collapsed, her spine fractured, but her dignity never faltered. She passed away peacefully in her sleep on August 29, 1982, her 67th birthday. At her bedside were loved ones, and a copy of The Little Prince, open to a passage about how the essential things in life are invisible to the eye. Her memorial at St. Martin in the Fields in London was attended by over 1,200 mourners, actors, artists, admirers, and her 3 children. As time goes by, played softly, echoing her immortal line from Casablanca. Her grandson, Justin Daly, remembered the chaos outside, the flashing cameras, the crowd pressing in. And then he felt it. She wasn't just his grandmother anymore. She belonged to the world. Ingrid Bergman's life was not perfect. It was brave, bold, brilliant. She lived with her heart wide open, on screen and off. And when she finally described Gregory Peck as massive, she wasn't referring to stature. She was describing presence. She was describing a soul too large to forget. If this tribute moved you, subscribe for more stories of icons who shaped not just cinema, but culture itself. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who else's story deserves to be told with this much care? And remember, greatness isn't loud. Sometimes it's the quiet presence that changes everything.